Hello, Megan.
Hello, Michelle.
Welcome to the Spicy Brain podcast, where we are navigating neurodiversity with curiosity, joy, and
Radical acceptance. High kick.
oh, well, welcome everybody. If you're new to us, we're so happy you're joining us. We love having new listeners. And if you're returning, some of you OGs, you know who you are. We're so happy you're coming back. We always try to somehow get around the concept of neurodiversity, ADHD, neurospicy, or whatever way you would like to frame it or say it. And we usually are listening to a book of some sort together, Megan and I, and then we kind of discuss it chapter by chapter, and then we like dig into that brain of hers or mine, whichever one comes up, and talk about a bunch of things around that. Sometimes strategies, sometimes not. Yeah, we don't always get to strategies.
We're not experts. We're just sisters.
Just sisters, absolutely.
And sometimes we learn that we're cringe when we say things like we're neurospicy. We're cringe to the young folks. So if you're out there and you're young, I apologize for being so cringe. But you know what? Let's just enjoy it. Let's just get all pruny in the cringe. Let's just, let's do it.
Is cringe though? I feel like once we use words in general, then they're cringy.
I know.
Or they're not appealing any longer. I don't know. Currently, we are in a book called The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids. And one of our longtime listeners asked us to do something on parenting. And so now we are into, I think it's like chapter 8 of this book. And it's been going on a while. So we are enjoying it, but it's meaty.
It's meaty. But mighty.
Meaty but mighty. I know we've had a couple books like this.
Well, the whole conversation of ADHD is meaty. I think that's the thing is like, there's not like one book. I feel like people like want to write a book and they're like, this is going to be it. This is going to solve all the problems. And it's like, it's a lifelong challenge until we solve, society. There's not one book that's going to solve it, but it's good information and we're learning.
Yeah, I like it because I think we basically get a chance to kind of look at somebody else's perspective on things and how they deal with it. And this author is, well versed in all of these things with their own family as well as they help other clients. And so I think it's kind of nice to look at their perspective. And I like the idea that this idea of complex doesn't mean just ADHD.
Yeah.
So she talks about things that are biological versus things that, are sort of more neurological. And so even, for example, like in our family, we have the gluten-free, dairy-free, all the allergies that makes life much more complex. And so dealing with those things, whether it's neurologically based or not, I think can be nice to think about. And also know you're not alone, right? Like there's other parents out there who are going through these things, and that you don't need to be ashamed of it.
Anything that makes you feel other. And society loves to make us feel other.
Yeah, make everybody feel other, right? So then no one's in.
Even the non-others, they other themselves. It's like, oh, all these like rich people made all of the social rules, and then they're like, but okay, you're rich, but like you're not old rich, and it's like, man, they other the others. Like it's just, it's too much energy. It's too much.
It is. I feel like we're going down a different rabbit hole. So I'm just going to bring us back to the book for just a second because I agree completely. But
sorry.
I was like, ooh, we're going down into one of those little dark holes.
Tell us you're an ADHD podcast without telling us you're an ADHD podcast.
So this particular chapter is about, speaking of, it's not what you say, it's how you say it was one of the things she was saying. So I probably just said that really poorly. But that like this idea that there's a lot of tension in the house can happen, right? With complex, and she says complex families, I think kind of for the first time in her book. And I liked that because I thought it didn't make it just about the kid who has complex needs.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they're in the family. So now the whole family has complex needs. If one person has the need, then sort of everyone does, I think. And so she starts talking a lot about the idea that upheaval and chaos in family life is super normal, but that when you have a kid with complex needs, that can kind of feel like it's on steroids. Like the chaos can become sort of all consuming. And she relates this to transitions. So I thought we would talk about that with you for a minute.
Why is that though? Like why? I guess I don't fundamentally understand that part of it. Like what is it? Like I feel like all kids are chaotic, but like she's saying that there's more to it than.
Well, no, she's saying, yes, it's true. It's all chaos when you have a family.
Yeah.
However, the day-to-day transitions, things that you would not necessarily, like she kind of described as, you wouldn't necessarily post these things on social media that it's a transition. Like you wouldn't think like, oh, getting up and getting ready from school to go to school, that becomes a routine for most kids at some point.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then for kids who like have complex needs, like sometimes that can be really, really tough. So if you're thinking about, for example, somebody who's diabetic, so they're type 1 diabetic kid, that would be one of the complex kids she's talking about. And all of a sudden their sugars are off right before they go to get in the car. That means everything has to stop to make sure that their sugars are okay.
That's true.
Right. And so I think it's the same concept, whether it's, you're making sure that somebody's sugars are okay, or maybe there's something going on for a kid who's got difficulty like managing their emotions and they're having a lot of anxiety before they go to school. And so now all of a sudden, not finding a shoe isn't just not finding a shoe. It becomes a whole moment, right? Of emotional upheaval for the kid. So then the parent has to stop to take care of that and make sure that's dealt with before they move on to the next thing. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's this idea that there can be times where these like normal day-to-day transitions, which are already kind of chaotic, right? Like any kid could lose their shoes. That's fine.
And have emotions, but maybe they don't talk about
and have emotions, but then, or maybe they don't have as deep of emotions. And we've talked about, you and I, a lot, that your depth of emotion sometimes can be much great. Like the proportion of it for you is, I don't know, proportion's the right word, but that you feel things deeply.
Yeah. It's
right. And you can go low very quickly.
I heard someone say it's almost like a volume knob, and like, and like somebody, like you might, like your volume goes up to 50%, but like mine goes up to 100, so it's like, or like,
50%.
Yeah. Yeah. Like on a normal 50% thing, it feels like 100 or something. But see, okay. And I'm going to derail this for a second, but I'm really interested in this now. So my initial thought when you were saying this was, okay, you're saying that, not you, but she's saying that these like routines and things, like, I mean, not me as a kid trying to get ready. Like I still have trouble getting my clothing on. Like I still forget it, and I'm 44 years old. So so then and I wonder, like, is some of the chaos put on as well? Like, is that like when she was talking about all the shoulds and the societal expectations, and like, we have like these ideas of what are the different milestones for kids. And so at this age, they should be doing this. And at that age, they should be doing that. So then, the emotional part of it makes sense, actually, now that you're saying it. But also, is some of this maybe stuff that we're putting on ourselves, like that morning shouldn't look this way? Like if I had a normal kid, it wouldn't look this way.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's true. But I mean, I think if you have like 3 kids in your family, like we did, right? Two of them are getting their shoes on and getting out the door, and another one is struggling with that.
Yeah.
Right. And that isn't to like make you feel bad about it, but like, I'm just thinking from like our mom's perspective,
right?
She had a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a little one that's like, whatever.
Who didn't like clothing.
Different. Sorry. 7. Yeah. Didn't like clothing and nothing felt good. Right. Cause you were highly sensitive.
Yeah.
And so it was just hard. The shoulds were harder maybe.
Yeah.
For that. That's maybe it is. Yeah.
It's like the other kids can do it. So why can't you? But not that that's not what she was thinking, but I'm just thinking like, I don't know. There's something there that's fascinating me at the moment. I can't quite, it's like tickling my brain. I can't quite put put words to it, but there's like, it's like a little feather that's like there's something there. Okay, we'll continue.
Well, I think you're right though. The assumption is that this should be getting done.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And I think that you're saying if society was more open to how one got schooled and what one has to wear and all these things, that maybe this wouldn't have felt like that big of an issue, or that like if transitions weren't the way they are, this would be a non-issue.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, I mean, the logical part of my brain is thinking, if I was, and I'm not an educator, and so this is just me shooting all over educators right now, but like if I had a school and I can see the research that like children, first of all, like, you know, are they notoriously can be late, or, you know, all kinds of things. Like, why is it that the whole idea of like a hard, fast, like you got to be here at this time, like, and I get why, but like, why wouldn't it be built in to the whole thing that's like, hey, this first hour is not going to be useful, and it's, you know, people are going to be strolling in at like all kinds of different times. And so we build that into the system as opposed to like trying to work against nature, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you're saying is like, could we just change the whole system?
It's true. Yeah. Could we just change everything? Because, you know, like, I mean, you can't decide if you're
well, and a lot of people do. Like, there's a whole like unschooling group, right? That, you know, that people are like, we don't want to have any rules around this, and we want the kids to be able to lead their own way, and they don't also need to go to school. And great, you know, I mean, there's
some great thing about like having some structure. Like, I mean, the structure was helpful for me. It's just like, but then it's like it feels like it just goes. It's like, okay, let's build structure, but then let's go beyond that and like over, like it's overkill structure. It's like, okay, you know, there's no like it I don't know, it just it feels, and I don't want to like be, it's not me, I don't want to be mean to like the educational system. It's just, but it's like, it feels like, okay, if we know that there's milestones, then why wouldn't those milestones be built in to the system? Like,
what do you mean by milestones built into this?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't had a child, you know, from birth to 18. So like, I'm totally talking out of my ass right now. And I completely understand that.
But you were a child from 0 to 18.
But I was a child from 0. So like, okay, I think about like, you know, when I was 5 to 6, like I'm still learning how to put my shoes on and like actually wear clothing. So it's like, okay, getting like, so like that whole process of like actually getting to school is such a monumental thing that like, it's not really about like, we don't really worry about time deadlines or like timing until, you know, they've reached a certain cognitive threshold, or they've reached a certain cognitive, you know, milestone. And then that's when we start bringing in being on time, because like as a child, like as a baby, like that's a lot of pressure to put on families.
Well, I think it's also the pressure of the family. Like if parents are working,
right,
I mean, you have to get them there because you have to go to work.
And so then and this just goes back to what I initially said about the whole time clock. And like, it's like, we're just teaching people to be robots, and like, we're just bringing them into factories. And I'm saying all this, like I know what I'm talking about, and I know I don't, but it just makes me frustrated that like, we don't reasonably accommodate people and say, oh, okay, like you're, you know, you've got family, like, okay, you might be a little late, and that's okay. Like,
yeah, and I think some places are that way and some aren't, right? And it just depends on where you're at. But I do think I agree with you to a large extent that I think there should be more flexibility. It sounds like what you're saying, but I think that's definitely true. And I actually really try to do that with my employees as much as I can, because I do know that people have like regular family things that happen, life that happens, and you'd rather keep somebody who's good than to be harsh on them about these certain things. But there are just transitions that you have to make, and that is harder for complex kids. It just is.
Like us podcasting.
And I was talking
like us transitioning from like whatever it is I want to talk about to like this actual topic of the conversation for the day.
Well, I was talking with a friend about how they were like just saying it's so hard for them if somebody tells them this is what the schedule is going to be and then changes it. Right. And they hate it. And it's like the worst for them. And they still feel this way. And, they're like, in their late 40s. It's like that's just really tough for them. And I think about that, with Josh, who's 19, and he's given me permission to talk about him. Thank you, Josh. But that has always been how it's been for him.
Yeah.
It is always. I always had to try to tell him what the schedule is going to be for the next day, because if I didn't, there would be like a complete meltdown, because he would have another idea of what was happening. So I always preface it. And even when he was like getting ready for doing all the things he had to do for university, I said, just one thing a day, bud. Like if you can get one thing a day done, you do that thing. So then we had something where it was like 2 or 3 things in a day. And he's like, you said one thing a day, and I had to really let go at that point, because I realized, oh, right, you need to lead this now, and you need to do what you need to do. And once I did do that, it went way smoother, because he could figure that out, right? And he could ask me for help when he needed to. But it took me a while, because I've been and I think probably for a lot of parents who have complex kids, have a complex family, you're used to having to kind of navigate all these things. Yeah. And so one of the things she says in this chapter is this idea of what the parent feels like, because we've kind of really talked a lot about what the kid feels like. And she says this important to acknowledge what you're feeling, because in fact, it could come out in your communication. It probably does come out in the way you're talking. And so some examples of things.
Well,
and
really
I thought this
quickly
would be
before we talk about the
since,
parents, because I just need to finish talking about myself one last time. I just find it so interesting though, that like Josh and your friend need to know what's going to happen. If you tell me what we have to do, then like I freak out. I'm like, if I know tomorrow I have to do something, then I'm like panicking. So I'm like, oh my God, is my brain going to be able to do it? And I was talking to my other girlfriend who's here in town with me, and she feels the same way. And I'm like, so it's like, it's like an expectation or something. I don't even know. Like, is that a pain thing, or is that an ADHD thing? Do you think? Like, I don't know, but we don't need to figure that out. I just needed to say that out loud, because I'm having a very spicy day today. And I am acknowledging it with you, and I'm letting you know where we're coming, Michelle, because now we can talk about parents.
Hot and spicy.
I've even got my fidget toy, which I haven't needed for a few weeks.
I think the big thing is the idea of embracing change. Can be difficult, and especially difficult for complex kids, right? And so that idea that parents stop wanting to plan things oftentimes might feel that way, because it's going to be too hard to navigate whatever the new thing is they're doing / thing that had to change. Like maybe the time changes. So one of your kids hates if things aren't on schedule, and the other one doesn't want to know the schedule, and so you're constantly navigating these types of things. The mere thought of togetherness kind of makes you want to run away, right? Like for some parents, like, oh my God, we have to do this together. Like not together. Like, could I just peel one of them off to do one thing and one of them off to do another?
I feel that way with Harold and Daisy. Like I just got to spend,
the pugs. I got to
spend like, a couple hours with Daisy, because she went with me to San Jose on the ride. And I was like, it's so nice just to have her. And then it's like, I don't have to do, and then I spent some time with Harold. I'm like, oh, it's nice just to have Harold. But like when the two of them are together, I'm just like, oh God, like they're just like, oh. Sometimes it's like, it's like hard.
It's more work.
Like, thank God I don't have 3 dogs, because I don't have 3 hands.
Well, I think part of the issue is when you're feeling all these things, like the idea, like you don't want to go home after work because you're going to have to deal with all the chaos of whatever's going to ensue, that
it's inevitable.
You start feeling kind of like disappointed that like you're failing parenting. And I think that the thing she brought up at the end, which was actually kind of hard to even listen to and write, was like, you hate to admit that all too often we don't like these kids very much.
Yeah.
And so we begin to stop liking ourselves instead, because you don't want to say like, I'm having trouble liking my kid right now.
Yeah.
Right. And you love them, but you're having trouble liking them. And I I don't know. That one really hit hard, right? Because I don't feel that way about Josh right now. But if I'm being honest, and Josh, if you ever listen to this, just know it's like one of these fleeting things that happen sometimes where you're just like in the middle of something with your kid and you're like, wow, I really don't want to have to be around this right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to be around this person right now. And
I think
I would imagine all parents feel like that at some point.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling it on the daily, I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
Because because you can go through whole stretches of time where they're acting a certain way that's really, especially like teenagers, it can be really, really tough.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, yeah, especially with like teenagers, it's like I don't like the way that they're acting, and it doesn't like change my love for the kid, but like, man, I don't like what's like the behavior that I'm witnessing, and being on the opposite side of that. When you said it, like it actually kind of hit me too, and I was like, oh, it felt validating. So I'm like, yeah, I did feel that a lot, but people don't want to acknowledge it because somehow acknowledging it means that you're a terrible human being. And it's like, no, you're just a human. Like
human. Right.
It's like you're going to have those feelings. And I feel like there's this like, again, this like Martha Stewart, Pinterest, leave it to Beaver, whatever her name is. You know, there's like this ideal that like mothers are never supposed to have feelings or emotions, or parents in general aren't supposed to have feelings. They're supposed to love their children. It's supposed to be this awe-inspiring like montage of a life, and that's just not reality. That's what's in the movies. That's why it's movie magic. And you know, to be able to just like own the feelings, I think makes it's like if you can own it, it won't fester. And when it's festering, like, you know, if you think about the fact that like we do feel like we hear things louder than people are saying them. So if you're having that feeling, like most likely the kid is hearing it.
You're not hiding it just because you're not saying it in words out loud.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point of her, this next piece of this, which is like you're having all these feelings. And so then the tone of your communication, they're valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The tone of your communication is acknowledging it, whether you're saying it directly or not, is potentially. And so
that makes sense.
She said in this, she said kind of her coach's reframe is like figuring out how to create a positive tone in the home. And so her whole thought, which I think kind of goes to your radical acceptance sort of philosophy, is that you need to embrace the chaos. And you need to figure out how to befriend it and respect it. And I was like, whoa, befriend it and respect it? Like, so why am I respecting chaos? Like, what is it I'm befriending? Like, what am I doing with this? And I thought about kind of over the course of the last couple of years of us doing this podcast of you working with me very distinctly to change my language around things I was saying about Josh, because it was basically what he was hearing and what you were hearing wasn't the words I was saying, but it was like the tone.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was the words, it was the actual language. And so I wanted to bring up a couple she brought up and see what you think. She said, be careful. Are you secretly calling your child an idiot? And I thought, okay, so things that you can do that might be, they may take a different way than what you had sort of intended.
Yeah.
But like your feelings and your emotion and your tone is coming out. So one of the things is, again, when you say like, instead of why don't you, say, what do you think? Why don't you do this? Well, what do you think about this or that?
Yeah.
It's like, that's interesting. When they're giving you something that they want to do and you want them to do it a different way, she said, saying like, yes, and yes, that's an idea. And also like, what about this other thing? So you're like acknowledging them and what they've said, potentially using could instead of should.
Yep.
When you can. And then she said, instead of like the thing to remember that they might be thinking when you're saying it, it's like, well, what were you thinking when you say that to a kid? And she said, might be interpreted as you're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were you thinking? Well, because that's, I think, what people say. Thinking? They use that as an exclamation or as an excitement of like, what were you thinking? And
yeah. And what on earth?
Yeah. What on earth?
Like could be interpreted to like, you can't do anything right.
Yep.
Because, you know, usually you're like in the middle of something that went wrong, right? Because there's chaos because their short-term memory doesn't work as well, or their butler didn't remind them to go pick up their shoes or whatever it was, right? So, and then she's saying like for the 10th time.
You know what's interesting about that, Michelle? Okay, let's just go down the hole of like, not hole, that didn't sound right, but like let's just go down the rabbit hole of like, you didn't put away your shoes for the 10th time. Like, what were you thinking? What on earth? And the chaos that brings. And it's like, I always wonder, like, whose chaos is it? Right? Like, because like I had a friend staying with us this weekend, and I was telling her, I was apologizing for like, I was like, yeah, I apologize. But I was like saying, you know, there's random stuff here, and like I don't always see it. And so like we were unpacking something, and I was telling her, I'm like, I have to throw this thing away right now, otherwise I won't forget, I won't remember, and then I won't see the packaging, and I'll keep walking by it and thinking like I gotta throw that thing away, and then but I won't. And she's like, oh, so do you have like blindness to that too? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do. Like I have like, what was it, clutter blindness, I think is what she called it. I was like, yeah, I do have clutter blindness. And so it's like the clutter, I think, would be chaotic to certain people. But like to me, I mean, yes, there's like, it's nagging in my brain, but it doesn't feel chaotic. And so it's like, also, I wonder, some of these things that are chaos, are they self-imposed chaos?
I think you keep going back to the same thing, which I totally am with you on, which is that it's a neurotypical world that we're trying to get like you to comply with, so to speak. Right. Like as parents.
And like, but I think this is like the hard part is like, if this is the hard part. Like it's
like, why does it matter?
Why? Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to like, why does it matter if you put your shoes in the place that you're supposed to put your shoes? Now, I understand that if like, if the shoes get left somewhere, and then that the chaos is the fact that in the morning we can't find them, and then it takes 15 minutes. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. But, and I think that's probably what she's been talking about the whole book. And then we just talked about it like months ago. And so realizing now that's what's happening. But
I think it's just the idea of like running a household and having to have things like some sorts of systems in place. If you have that, I don't know. But like, you know, like usually you want clothes to be washed at some point. You know, usually you want to like get out of the house at some point. And those transitions, I think, can be really tough. And it's tough for everyone, right? Like it's not just, but I think it can be more difficult when that transition, it's like, in my case, like with Josh, it would oftentimes be that he was the one struggling with the emotions about not being able to find something, not me. Right. So but then it's like I'm dealing with the emotional part with him. And that feels chaotic at some point because I wasn't expecting him to have that, you know, experience with it or something. And so then I'm trying to manage my own emotions while also trying to help him manage his. And so like, I think this comes down to like emotions much more than the physical things, because really generally the physical things weren't the thing that was the problem. Problem was the reaction to the thing, whatever it was. And I feel like that was, for me as a parent, the hardest part. I don't know, maybe other people don't have that, but like for me, the hardest part was the emotional regulation that was difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And then it would sometimes trigger me because I hadn't had enough help yet. And so then my emotional regulation would be off balance. And so I think you're right. Like once you're not spinning with the kid, if you get help so that you're not spinning with the kid, then all of this does, the mindset she's talking about is much easier to have.
Yeah.
But a huge piece of it is like owning your own emotions of it as a parent. Like,
Yeah.
why
Like
is it triggering you? Why is this
owning the resentment,
Mm-hmm.
owning the disappointment, like owning the
Yeah.
fact that like, you don't really like your kid, or this wasn't the kid that you thought you were going to have, or like being able to just like own that. And I know we've talked about this
And own
before.
your fears around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this, but like, I just like, and I'm maybe you're getting to it and I'm just not letting you continue, but like,
It's very possible.
okay, I'll shut up.
No. But I'm just saying, I don't know if we're getting to whatever it is you think we should be getting to. But
I don't know. Like, I think that like this whole idea of acknowledging that there are times that you just don't like your kid. I think to me, like how much that would have changed my life if that had just been acknowledged, that like that who I like, that it wasn't a secret. Cause I think that I felt it from a lot of people in my life. And it's one of those things where it's not okay for people to feel that way. But I think as a person who is spicy, I was supposed to call myself neurotypical. I'm like, I'm not neurotypical. But as a person who is like, on the receiving end, like I'm okay if I'm a disappointment. Like I get it. Like like I am not what you're going to expect. But the cool thing is that like I am so much more than what you would ever expect. And so like I need you to like get over the disappointment and the resentfulness and the just not liking me, so that you can see all of the amazing stuff that I actually do have to offer.
And I think that is her exact point. So she says essentially, like, you need to shift your own thoughts to be able to improve your communication with your kid. And first thing is like owning what is your biggest fears or your biggest resentments or your biggest issues.
Yeah.
So like say them out loud, write them down, own it, because it's okay. Like it's normal to feel like this isn't what you expected, just like you're saying. Yeah, they're valid feelings. And then she's like, the other thing is ask somebody like your spouse or your BFF or somebody, like what tends to sneak out in your tone, because they're probably observing it or seeing it. And you did this with me, right? You were like, you're saying he's never going to be able to do this, Michelle, and I think that's not the right way to do it. And you actually were like very good at making sure that I had to like think about that, right? Of like how I'm phrasing things and how I'm saying things can matter so much. And that also maybe a negative belief I had that wasn't going to be helpful.
Yeah.
So changing just like your belief system, you have to change your words and you have to change your tone. And all of that connects to sort of changing your fundamental belief system. And because I think I did have a fundamental belief that there was like nothing was ever going to change. And that just isn't true. Like one of the things she said in a couple, like maybe it was the last chapter, a chapter before, she's like, look 3 years back and see where you've come, how far you've come and how far your kid has come in 3 years, instead of looking at micro, amounts, looking like, oh yeah, 3 years ago, wow, that's huge difference between what Josh was able to do and what he's able to do now. So, it's just that, maybe I'm on this weird timeline with it that isn't realistic. And also,
you might have a blind spot. You may have a blind spot that you're not aware of. And so like your family and friends might be able to see that, because we all have blind spots for things in our lives.
Or maybe it's not blind. It's just wrong. You know what I mean? It's just not helpful.
Right.
In my case, I don't think I was blind spot about it. I just wasn't helpful at all, like taking this mindset. And then I liked this one too. Like, get curious about what else is also true besides your fears. Like, what else is also true about your kid besides your fears? And I think that's what you're saying is like, if you can get through this, acknowledge this, you can look and see what else I have to offer and what else I'm bringing to the world.
Yeah.
And, I think we're, as parents, kind of taught that we're supposed to like mold these kids into this certain adult person, right? Or whatever it is. And I think you definitely help with that. I don't mean to say like, I don't think parents do that. I think we do. I think the conversations we have, all that's there. But, kids come out of the womb the way they are.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to like fundamentally change who they are, but you might give them some ideas, some value systems, some things. But, in general,
nature versus nurture. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think this idea of shifting from being sort of adversarial to cooperative is what she had sort of advocated for. But the only way to do that, I think, is exactly what you're saying, which is like own it. Own that you may not like your kid sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that would be quite a controversial thing to say as a parent.
Yeah.
In many parenting communities. I'm not saying none, right? I mean, I'm sure there's people out there listening to this going like, oh yeah, I totally get that. But I could see there would be some people like, I love my kid. Like, no, it doesn't mean you don't love them. Of course you love them.
Of course you love them.
But
like, in order to truly love them, you have to acknowledge your own feelings. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we've kind of, I feel like the things that I've observed in the parenting community is like kids, you know, for the longest time, it was like, should not be seen or heard, or they're pack mules, or like, they're like the worker bees or whatever. And so like, we've tried to like, over the generations, like they were changing, and like, then it becomes like helicopter pilots. And then it's like, no, it's all peace and love. And it's like, but at the end of the day, like the most important thing that we can do with any relationship, whether it's our children or ourselves or our partners, like, is to be honest with where we're at. Because like in honesty is where growth can happen.
And I think trying to really be conscious of your perspective and your mindset around the people, because I think, it's so easy to be sort of harshest to the ones we love.
Yeah.
Right. And so really taking that moment to be like, okay, am I, and getting help from other people to see it if you're struggling, seeing it yourself, but ask honestly. I mean, I have a friend or two that I wish they would ask me honestly, like, how do I perceive their parenting? And I would like for that to say the same to them. How do you perceive mine? What could I do differently? What might I be not realizing I'm doing that could be helpful? And I do that with you all the time. And that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Like, it's really helpful when we have these conversations, because then I can slow down and be like, okay, oh, right. That's, is it so important that Josh gets all his thank you cards out for graduation? Well, yes, it was. Okay. I did.
Yeah. And you did.
I did follow my sword on that one. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you got to get these out, because there's a lot of people who supported you, and it's really important. Now, was it as important that he took the random chair that he bought at some thrift shop back before he left on his giant 2-week, 3-week cross the country journey? No. Like,
yeah.
Those were the two things I wanted him to do before he left. Thank you cards got done. The chair did not.
Yeah.
Right. So I just took care of it. Right. So I left it for him in a spot. He can deal with it when he comes back.
Right.
So it's like, what's important? What are we falling on our sword about? What are we not? Was part of it. But yeah, I think owning it. And it was hard. It was hard to read that part for me.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean,
it's hard to think about it, but it's true sometimes.
It's true. And like, I mean, I think that's the thing is like, when we talk about like parenting ourselves and like from the inner child part, like it was hard for me to realize that I just fundamentally hated myself. And that's the thing is like, I heard everybody else hating me. And so then I just internalized it. And so, little Rosie, like Tallulah comes. So I have these inner children, you people, I have inner children, you people who are listening. I have these inner children, and Rosie's my little 5-year-old self, and then Tallulah Jones is my middle schooler. And Tallulah came along and was like, I know, she's a sassy beast. She came along and was like, Rosie, you suck, and you're an embarrassment, and you're disappointing, and I resent like how cute you are and how adorable you are and like how naive you are, and like you've made life so hard for me, and I don't like you, and so I'm gonna shove you in this cabinet and not let you come out and play. And I think like that was never really because there, there wasn't a model. It wasn't modeled to me. Had there been a model for me, if someone saying like, hey, these feelings are okay, these feelings are valid, but we have to work through them, because that model is also worked through them, as opposed to like it being shameful. And so then it became shameful because like I think that, society tells us that we should feel shame for these feelings. But then those feelings become very, very toxic and very
and loud.
loud. Yeah. And then you have like a little 5-year-old inside of you screaming to get out. And then, you're like going through life as a 30-year-old, and then your body gives out on you. Like, it's like your body will eventually make you deal with it. It's just, when do
Yeah.
you have to deal with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, there's some great books about like that the body keeps the score, I think is one of them, and how all of these things that we're saying to ourselves can cause such physical manifestations at some point, right? It's interesting when you were saying that. I mean, it's heart-wrenching to think about it and hard to think about how mean you were to yourself at that time, but I know that that was happening outwardly too, because middle school is the worst in terms of that. And then your family, you've got teenagers above you who are being the worst version of themselves sometimes as well. I know I was at times. And I think about all of those pressures and thinking like, how do you stay resilient? And so I think that's part of the issue as a parent too, is like, you don't want to pile on.
Yeah.
You're not intentionally trying to pile on to your kids' issues, right? Because they're coming home oftentimes telling you that they're having so much trouble making friends.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking about, just Josh and some other kids I know that, are sort of like had come through and there was real issues going on for them. And so then on top of it, as the parent, I'm saying things or doing things looking back now going, gosh, that really didn't help. That, all Josh needed to hear is that he's exactly just perfect, exactly as he is. He doesn't need to change something. And I remember when you changed schools at one point, I was like, okay, Meg, you just got to do your hair and you got to wear this right clothes and then you'll fit in and then da-da-da-da. Because like I didn't have any other tools for you other than those things. And so what does that say to you though, right? Like who you are fundamentally wasn't okay somehow, which of course wasn't true. But that I can't imagine you would have taken that any other way.
Yeah, the one that was really hard was like Dad would always say, you just have to learn how to have like a joke back, like have a little quip. And if you use humor to deflect, then that's all you need. And I just couldn't do it. Like it was there was nothing funny about it to me. And I remember trying, but like it was just it felt impossible to make a joke about it, because it was like it was so it felt so awful. And really all I needed in that moment was a hug that says, you don't have to do anything. Those kids, like, I know you wouldn't say this to a baby, a kid, but like, f them. Like, whatever the age appropriate version of it is.
Yeah.
Those kids are
That's their problem. That's not you.
don't
Yeah.
change anything. And
yeah.
you
And
are
I
perfect
think
just the
that's
way you
right.
are.
And if you as the parent don't feel that, you need to acknowledge it so that you can move past it, because she says like you need to embrace the chaos, you need to accept it, you need to actually befriend it. And I was like, befriend it, whoa. Like, but you have to befriend the chaos, because otherwise you're not befriending your kid, right?
No, that's
in a way.
No. Let's hold on that for a second. You have to befriend the chaos, otherwise you can't befriend your kid.
Yeah.
Because your kid is in whatever's happening, whatever perception is occurring, they're not trying to be chaotic. They're just being themselves.
No.
But it's coming across as chaos. And so if you're not befriending that, if you're adversarial towards it, then you're going to be adversarial towards your kid. Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
And so I think you found ways, like with your husband, Brian, right, who's allowed us to talk about him too.
Thank you, Brian.
That are using humor.
Oh yeah.
To befriend and accept the chaos, because both of you are diagnosed with ADHD, which is like amazing that you two like make it. You have different forms, right? So it's helpful maybe.
Yeah.
And not helpful. but you found ways to make it funny.
Yeah.
And so using humor. So some of these other techniques that she's talked about in this book, I'm sort of thinking about with this, but to get to the point where you can use humor, you have to like say, I am at my wit's end. I am so frustrated. I'm struggling liking my kid right now. I'm having, like you have to own your emotions before you could get to that.
Yeah.
So I feel like this chapter is like pretty meaty, and in the sense of like, I don't know, you just create a positive atmosphere out of thin air.
No, you can't.
You have to do the work, and the work is kind of brutal because you have to look at yourself and say like, oh my gosh, yeah, I feel these things that are really hard.
This wasn't in my plan when I was pregnant or when I was, preparing for having a kid. This wasn't in my plan. This wasn't in my bingo card of like, oh, I'm going to end up hating my kid. But like, don't we all hate our kid at some point? I mean, like, don't we? I mean,
I don't know.
Anybody that you love anybody you love. Don't you end up hating the people you love at some point? Like, I mean, there's
frustrated.
Yeah, but like,
sure.
that's the thing is like,
yeah,
I think that's the thing is like, when we say hate, it just seems like it's so moral. Like there's a moral basis to it. And really what it is like there's something that's occurring that is really hard for you. And so you can hate that and not necessarily hate the person. But like anybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when you say hate the kid, it's sort of like, well, I hate the behavior,
Yeah.
But maybe you hate the kid. I don't know. I mean, I think when you have someone who is in a constant state of pain.
Yeah.
The way that they act that out can be so different, right? You could have a kid who completely shuts down.
Yeah.
Right, when they're in a constant state of pain. You could have somebody who's yelling at you and screaming at you and throwing things. You could have somebody who's joking.
Yeah.
All the time. They're always joking. They're the funniest person in the room. And they're the most, we've seen so many of our comedians who've ended up, being underlying all this pain. And so I think it could look a lot of different ways. And I agree, though. I think that, there's this idea that somehow you're going to have this kid and it's going to, you might have this idealized version of it. And maybe you're also have your own complex issues.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that something isn't what you expected could be really, really difficult. And so, for me, I feel like in knowing him, knowing Josh as he's gotten older, he's exactly who he was at 5.
Yeah.
Really, still to this day, he's very similar. But I do see that some of the joy and some of the lightness and some of all of that got kind of pummeled out of him for not fitting in, right? For not being like everyone else, and how hard that was on him. And that as a parent, I wish I had sort of read this book then. I mean, I know I can't like go back and look at it, but if I was right now with a teenage, a middle schooler, a Tallulah Jones, and if I could give any advice to my past self, which is really think about your mindset, really think about how do you befriend the chaos? How do you befriend your kid? Because that's their lifeline, is you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're their lifeline. No matter what they're saying about friendships, what they're saying about anything else, they need you. And showing up every day, even if you don't do it particularly well, is more important than not showing up. Right?
Yeah. And, I've always thought like we hurt the people that we love the most. Because if you think about it, like hate is just the opposite of love. So in order to truly love somebody, there is that possibility that it can flip at times. And I was just talking with Brian about like, we were just having a conversation today and I was telling him about like, how prior to me having my PHP, my partially hospitalized program that I went through, I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like prior to that, I would not have been okay with what I'm asking for you right now. And I wonder like if I don't think that parenting ever ends, right? So it's like I'm sure you've talked to Josh about this, about like what you wished you would have done differently. But that I don't think it's ever too late. Like to have To
No,
have
yeah.
somebody come back and that I love say, "Hey," like, I mean, when the first time you told me, you know,
Mhm.
it was very impactful and very powerful, and, like, even I don't think it's ever too late to repair. I think that's the other thing,
No,
and
I don't think so. Not if it's genuine.
yeah, and it's always
Not if you're
important.
coming from a genuine place and you're really listening
Yeah,
as best you can, yeah, for sure.
and, like, owning your own
For
stuff
sure.
and, like, even if, like, you're in, your later part of life, it's like and you're, like, reconnecting with them, it's like, "Hey, I just am realizing, like, what I've done." I'm realizing, like,
Mhm.
what my part in all this was, like, it doesn't matter when it happens, as long as at some point it can happen, and it's a tough one. I mean, I also kind of wonder, like, I was thinking about, like, the whole idea of hatred. Do you think that part of the hate is also maybe hating yourself for, like, some like, is there, like, having, like, a strong emotion about, like, maybe that I wasn't able to I didn't produce a person who was normal or I don't know, like, I mean, is there a part of it that also might get transposed onto the kid?
Like transferred over to them.
Transferred, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
I think she said that like somewhere in the book or the chapter was just this idea of like you don't like them and so you end up not liking yourself, but maybe it's the other way too, like you didn't like yourself because you had them. You know what I mean in some way. Maybe, I don't know.
I know that wasn't your
I think
particular thing, but, like, I could also see, like,
mm-mm,
there's a reason why I didn't have kids because I was like, I knew that if I had kids when I was younger, I would have resented them and it would have come
mm,
out, and that's why I was like, I already hate myself, like, I'm not gonna put that hatred on a child. So I could see, like, myself having done that where I would have
mm-hmm.
ended up hating them because I hated myself.
Yeah, and I think when we're thinking about these things from my perspective at least, again, it's like sometimes processing in real time is always hard to kind of
Mm.
really fully put my finger on it with Josh specifically, but I do think that I didn't feel equipped
Mm.
always to handle situations. And I think like you think you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, like you're supposed to be equipped to deal with these things. And I felt there were things that were sort of like out of my skill set,
Yeah.
out of my range or out of my understanding of like what was happening. And I think there's times in my life when I look back and go, oh, that's what was going on. And okay. And there's hindsight, right?
Yeah.
And all you can really do is say, like, well, I did the best I could with what I had and what I knew. And, of course, those things I say to myself all the time. But I do look back on it and think, you know, getting help for these things should be the automatic response to anytime you're feeling kind of spinny with your kid or you're feeling a lot of strong emotions, is that you don't have to keep feeling that way.
Mm.
It doesn't have to keep going like this.
Yeah.
It can be different. And if you get help and get support, and there are all kinds of support out there for parents, whether it's in groups or it's one on one, or it can be through the school. There's so many places to get help. And I really chose to go through so much of it on my own. Even though I had you, I still did so much of it on my own and tried to figure it out myself. Like I was going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and, just get
'Cause
through it.
that's
And
what
we had
mothers are supposed to
counselor,
do. That's what mothers are supposed to do. Like, mothers
right?
aren't supposed to have any
And we
emotions.
did, we
Supposed to be
did have a
supported.
counselor
Yeah.
about the divorce, right? That's what we had the counseling for. But I never thought about until later about having support around specifically the behaviors I was seeing,
Mm.
even to the point of like, and partly because I didn't have always the authority to get testing and things like that done due to my circumstances. But it was really tough to be like, oh, I okay, and the school, like we did school, and sometimes that was helpful, sometimes it wasn't, but you didn't
Yeah.
have an official diagnosis. So how do you handle all of that? So I really do feel like getting help, getting whether diagnosis officially is needed, acknowledging what you're experiencing and getting support for that, I think can be really helpful. I do think diagnosis can help a lot of people because it can get you support services that, schools have to give you
Yeah.
support services then once you have it. So I think that's one of the things that can be helpful for some people. But I think bigger picture is just like, yeah, getting help in whatever form that looks like. It could be just a neighbor friend who also has a kid who's gone through this, and maybe they're a little further along than you are in navigating school, or
a Facebook
whatever,
group, or a Reddit, or anybody who
whatever it is.
understands.
But yeah, and not feeling alone in it, I think, is so important.
Well, and that is probably one of the good things about the internet, is that it's allowed people to connect in ways that we couldn't do prior to it really blowing up. It's like the double-edged sword of social media. It just needs to be it's just another thing of like, another thing that needs to change. The way that we look at motherhood needs to change, like, and parenthood.
Yes.
It's like, you're not going to have it all figured out. I mean, come on. They didn't even, Michelle, they didn't even give you physical therapy after you had your C-section. It's like, oh, you just had your entire abdomen, cut open. No, you don't need any help. You're fine. Just grit and bear it.
Put a Band-Aid on it. You guys are going to be good.
Fine.
So I think, again, like shifting our mindset on these things, though, internally, since we can't change the entire system, is probably at least a place to start, right?
Yeah. But also,
I mean, really, like acknowledging. Acknowledging what's going on, getting people to help you to see what your blind spots are, like you said, I think is so important. And then again, like getting curious about your kid. We keep talking about curiosity, joy, radical acceptance, but that curiosity of like, what is it that I'm seeing? And I'm so appreciative, again, for this podcast, because it really helped me to then have a conversation with Josh around college and like what he wanted to do with his life. And he finally was able to express, like, I just love history. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
God. Yeah.
Good. Thank God you love it. I knew it. He always has. But he definitely, to stay motivated, like we talked about a couple podcasts ago, needs interest. Mm-hmm. That pinch thing, like to stay motivated, it was, what was it? Play, and then interest, and then was something else. And I mean, it was just this whole thing, but I can't remember all of them right now, but I do remember like interest is such a huge one for him. So to stay motivated. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like this whole portion of the chapter is about acknowledgement. It's acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging where the kid's at, acknowledging, the challenges, and then also really acknowledging that, like, listening to what the kid's saying and then acknowledging what they need. Like, that's really what
and acknowledging is. That what you're saying can give them the impression that you feel like they're not worthy, or that they're not capable, or that they're not whatever, right? Like, and so the way you say things is as important as what you're saying.
Yeah. And just because, like, you may not have that intention, and that isn't your intention, but 75% of what we communicate gets lost in translation. So, even though you're not communicating that, like, everything gets mixed up and converted, and you think you're saying one thing and it's coming out completely different way. And so it's just being able to acknowledge it.
I will tell you the one thing you told me recently, and I don't remember where you heard it from, but you said you started using this phrasing, I think, with a few people in your life, that the story I'm telling myself is, like, so when they're having an emotional thing, or there's something going on where you're not agreeing, the story I'm telling myself is, and I used this with Josh before he went on his trip, and because he's going on this 2-week adventure across the country, and I was like,
freaking out,
kind of thinking, well, no, I just was like, I think maybe you should have a checklist for the things you want to pack. It was very pragmatic. It was just like, I've always had a checklist. Might you want a checklist in my mind? And so finally I realized, like, I said, do you think maybe a checklist might be an idea? And I think he heard, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like a very practical thing that happened just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I later went and I actually printed one out anyway, because I'm like, meh. But I printed it out, and before I gave it to him, I just said, the story I'm telling myself is that you might be anxious about your trip. And so because you might be anxious about your trip, you might not have the bandwidth to kind of listen, to listen to me / like also like create a checklist. And so the story I'm telling myself is that I'm making like you more anxious because now I'm telling you you have to create a checklist and you don't even have the bandwidth to like pack.
Yeah.
Right. And he just like melted immediately. And he was like, that sounds right. And I was like, okay, here's a checklist. Would you like it? And I got you a pen and we could just check it off as we go. And he was like, let's do that. And so we sat down and it changed the whole tone, right? It changed the whole interaction. And now it was a positive interaction, which is exactly her point in this book, is that the language you use, the phrases you use, the way you started off is going to take whatever is sort of like in this moment of transition, because the transition was he's at home and now he's leaving, right? So transition times are where they all happen. All the meltdowns and all the negativity and all the things, not all, but like 95% of it, that's when it's going to happen. Yeah. And so if you take ownership of your own feelings, how you're feeling about it, and I think the way you had me do it, where did you hear that from? It was such a great
that was
phrase,
in therapy.
I think
it started off, Samaya taught it to me, and then our family therapist also reinforced it. I was like, oh yeah, the story I'm telling myself, right?
And I was like, I couldn't believe it worked. You know what I mean? But then I thought, well, if somebody said it to me, then it's their own emotions, their own issue. It's not me. And and it was true. It wasn't him. It was me. It was just like, this is the thing I'm telling myself. And
there's no
why
assumptions.
I keep bringing this up and blah, blah, blah.
There's no assumptions being made. It's just a story. And the story can be rewritten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story can be rewritten. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think try it. That's what I would tell somebody if I was going to give one little piece of like a little, try this strategy, try it out with the kid. I mean, they have to be old enough, right? But
maybe, Michelle, the way to acknowledge your feelings is that you say, the story I'm telling myself is that I hate my kid. That's not actually true, but it's the story I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
And if you tell a story long enough, it becomes a tape that you play back, and then it becomes a neural pathway. So let's just reframe the story.
Mm-hmm. And I think as you're saying that, I think it's also like hate is a pretty strong word, but like I think when you say it and you say the story I'm telling myself is that my kid is not going to be successful and I am fearful of that, and that is like leading me to be angry or agitated or whatever, right? That like you could get into a little more specifics with it, and that may be why you feel like you hate them at the right, or hate the situation or whatever it is at the moment. But like getting those emotion words out, and sometimes we need a list, people. It's okay. Like you can just print off a list from the internet and just like go down, because I know for me, like I'm not great with emotion words. You always have all of them as an actor, but for me, I'm like, okay, wait, how is it I'm feeling exactly?
I mean, that's the thing is like, if we go at it, so here's the thing, if we go at it from the acting world, right? Whenever you see somebody who is rageful and angry, it's because there's deep, deep sadness that they're covering up. And so my guess is that this is also just a theory, but that if you're saying if the word hate is popping up in your head, it's that there's a deep sadness and there's a deep concern. There's something else. And so, but, and it's, if you say to yourself, the story I'm telling myself is that I hate my kid. No, that's not right. I love my kid. That's not what it is. What is it? What's causing this word hate to appear? Because you don't actually hate your kid, but there's something that it's easy for us. It's like, because hate is such a strong emotion, it's an easier way for us to tap into an emotion that might be more nuanced and complex. And so,
and I think also like to say like I dislike my kid is fine too, because there's some reason what underneath it, right? Like whether hate, dislike, however you would say it.
Yeah, and I just think like the word is more of like an alarm bell. It's more of like oh hey, there's something else. Like it's not actual hate, right? Like you don't actually hate your kid. It is, but like if that word is popping up in your head, or if that idea is popping up in your head, acknowledging it means that like you can acknowledge it by saying, this is here and this is coming up because there's something else I have to look at. There's something else that's occurring, and let me do a little digging and figure out. Let me be curious with myself. and figure out what the actual story is.
And
I'm
go down a layer.
Yeah. Go down a rung, right? Remember there was the ladder. Go down a rung. Because right now you're in the I hate my kid, which is not, that's not real. You're in, remember the ladder, Michelle? And it was like, there's the like delusional ladder, the delusional rung. Like
that's the down
the
one. Bottom
right.
one is, so you want to go up.
Yeah. Like, so hatred, you're in a delusional state because it's not real, right? Like you don't hate your kid.
Right.
It's not real. But if you don't acknowledge it, that can fester over time and then it can eat away at you. And then it's like, okay, so let's not like, but what else is there?
Right. Absolutely. I agree completely. Okay. I think we're on the same page. We figured it all out. Just so you know.
All is figured
out. Now the work begins.
Oh,
that's the thing.
I was
right?
like
now
done.
Now the actual work
we
begins.
Don't got anything more to do. We figured it out. Oh, shit. Now the work begins.
Dang it. Thanks for talking to me tonight.
Thanks for talking to me too. I love you so much.
Love you too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Spicy Brain Podcast, brought to you by Spicy Brain Studios. We really appreciate you joining on the journey today as we explored why it's not always what you say, but how you say it. Remember, guys, sometimes the smallest shift in our tone can make the biggest difference in how our kids hear us. Next week, we're going to take one step further by talking about connection over correction. We're going to explore what it looks like to shift our energy away from trying to control our kids and towards regulating ourselves first, because a calm, connected parent is often the best place for change to begin. Make sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and if you're enjoying the show, leave us a review because that helps other neurospicy folks find their way here too. But until then, here is to a great end of the week, and remember to stay curious
and joyful
with a whole lot of radical acceptance. High kick.